Welcome to Fact Horizon. This is where history meets mystery and facts define the future. We explore the profound truths of human existence, the wonders of the mind, and the secrets of the cosmos, all in one place. If you seek knowledge and wonder, you're in the right spot. Subscribe now and join our journey beyond the horizon. Today, we begin an exploration of a story that has captivated readers for 2 centuries. Jane Austen's timeless classic, Pride and Prejudice. In this first installment, we focus on the electrifying arrival of wealth in a quiet neighborhood and the initial fiery friction between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. We are examining the foundational chapters that set the stage for all the novel's wit and drama.
It is a fascinating study in early impressions and social dynamics. We'll be navigating the complexities of 19th century English society, where a single man's fortune dictated not just his life, but the fate of entire families. We'll see how hope, ambition, and judgment are all laid bare from the moment a gentleman steps into a room.
And we have to start with what is, I think, arguably the most famous opening line in all of English literature.
Oh, absolutely. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife.
It's just brilliant. But what's so clever about it is that it's not actually a truth, is it?
Not at all. I mean, what Austen does in just those few words is establish the entire world, its central conflict, and its main satirical point. She calls it a universal truth. But you realize immediately that this truth only exists in the minds of the families around the man.
Right. It's not about what the wealthy man wants. It's a statement about the market. It's the consensus fantasy of every mother with, a marriageable daughter.
Exactly. It's an economic statement. The moment capital, in the form of this wealthy man, arrives, the local market, which is Meryton society, immediately decides a transaction is necessary.
And the novel wastes no time in showing us the chilling part of that idea.
It really does, because that man is instantly considered the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. The language is so deliberate. Property.
It turns courtship into a hunt, an economic acquisition. The daughters are the assets, and the mothers are the portfolio managers trying to secure a future.
And that desperation, that frantic energy, it all comes from the very real danger facing the Bennet family.
Yes, let's unpack that. We have Mr. and Mrs. Bennet and their 5 unmarried daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Catherine, and Lydia. For Mrs. Bennet, this isn't just a social game.
No, it's a survival strategy. It's the only career path available to them, and it's absolutely mandated by their very precarious financial situation.
The invisible anvil, as you've called it before, the entailment on the Longbourn estate.
Right. And while the first chapter doesn't spell it out in detail, it hangs over everything. An entailment was a legal trap, really. It meant the estate, their home, could only be passed down through the male line.
And Mr. Bennet has no son.
No son. Which means when he dies, his wife and his 5 daughters get nothing. The house, the income, everything goes to a distant cousin, Mr. Collins.
So they're facing destitution, legalized destitution.
That's a perfect way to put it. And it completely reframes Mrs. Bennet, doesn't it? She's often played for laughs, the silly, embarrassing woman, and well, she is silly and embarrassing.
Of course.
But her frantic plotting, her social climbing, it's all rooted in a very real terror.
Mm-hmm.
She's not just trying to show off, she's trying to save her 5 daughters from poverty before the clock runs out.
So it's against that backdrop of, sheer financial terror that the big news drops.
The event horizon for the Bennet family, Netherfield Park, is let at last. The market is officially open.
And how do we find out? Through the fastest communication network in the country.
High-speed gossip, exactly. Mrs. Bennet hears it from Mrs. Long, and you just know that news spread like wildfire. A new source of money has arrived.
The description of the tenant, Mr. Bingley, is also very specific. He's a young man of large fortune from the north of England.
And the detail of his arrival is key to understanding his status, The book says he came down on Monday in a chaise and 4.
A carriage pulled by 4 horses.
Yes. And that wasn't just for comfort. That was a statement. It meant speed, it meant expense, and it was reserved for men of really significant wealth. It signaled new money, probably from industry up north, which is a slight contrast to the old landed gentry.
And Mrs. Bennet immediately knows the first move. She goes into what you could almost call a military mode.
She does. She knows the rules of the game inside and out.
Yeah.
She tells Mr. Bennet he must call on him. It's incumbent on him.
Because without that formal introduction from the man of the house, her daughters can't be introduced.
And the whole plan fails before it even starts. The game is over.
Which brings us to the wonderful dynamic of the Bennet marriage.
Oh, it's perfect. Mrs. Bennet, this whirlwind of anxiety and schemes, versus Mr. Bennet, the detached, witty observer who'd rather just stay in his library.
His response is so classic. She says, "Do you not want to know who has taken it?" And he just says,
"You want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it. It's delicious." He lets her think she's pushing him around, but he knows what he has to do.
he uses that dry wit as a kind of shield, doesn't he? To keep his distance from all the vulgarity of it all.
He does. He finds it ridiculous, but he's also not a fool. He knows what's at stake for his daughters. And so, despite all his teasing and his resistance, he does make the visit. He opens the door.
The necessary social nicety is observed, which sets the stage for the first big public event.
The Meryton Assembly Ball.
Which is really, if we stick with our analogy, it's a market assessment is where the new wealth is put on display.
Right.
And the local assets, the daughters are, well, they're judged.
And the contrast between the two main men, Bingley and Darcy, couldn't possibly be more stark. Bingley is an instant hit.
A total success. Mrs. Bennet's verdict is just glowing. She calls him, sensible, good-humored, lively, so much ease with such perfect good breeding.
He's the ideal package. He's handsome, and he seems genuinely happy to be there. He is willing to sort of share his good fortune through just being sociable. He integrates.
But the real turning point of the night, at least for the Bennets, is his attention to Jane.
This is where we see social validation in action. He thinks Jane is quite beautiful, which is lovely, but the critical action is that he danced with her. Twice. And in the etiquette of the time, that was huge. Dancing once is a formality. Dancing twice with the same woman when you're the most eligible bachelor in the room.
It's a public declaration.
It's a signal, a measurable, visible sign that she is his preference. It immediately elevates Jane's status above everyone else in the room, and it validates Mrs. Bennet's entire campaign.
So Jane's stock is soaring. But Bingley didn't come alone, did he?
He did not. He brings his whole entourage, his sisters, Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst, and his friend, Mr. Darcy.
And the initial expectations for Darcy are, as the book says, splendid.
Even grander than for Bingley at first. He's taller, he's handsome, and his fortune is known to be immense. 10,000 a year. I mean, that's a staggering amount of money.
A fortune that completely dwarfs Bingley's.
Absolutely. So initially the whole room is buzzing, but that splendor, it evaporates almost instantly.
What does he do?
He does nothing. And that's the problem. He represents old landed wealth from Derbyshire, and his reaction to this small town ball is just visible disgust. He finds the company beneath him.
He's quickly seen as proud and conceited.
Yes. He refuses to dance much. He only talks to his own party, and he just radiates this air of judgment. His sisters are just as bad, by the way. They cling to their rank, even though their own family money comes from trade, a detail they'd rather everyone just forget.
And all of this leads to the moment that really ignites the entire plot, the insult.
The first point of real friction. Bingley, ever the good guy, tries to get his friend to dance. He points out that Elizabeth Bennet is sitting down.
And Darcy delivers that absolutely fatal line.
She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me.
And he says it just loud enough for her to overhear.
Of course. It's a public dismissal. It's not just about her looks, the statement of class. It's him saying she isn't valuable enough to be worth his time or effort.
So Elizabeth, or Lizzie, she hears this. Her mother's reaction is what you expect, just pure fury.
She is not to dance with him ever. But Elizabeth's response is so much more telling. She jokes about it with her mother, of course.
Right. She says her mother can safely promise she'll never dance with him.
But internally, her pride is wounded deeply. And this is the core of it. She says to herself that she could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine.
It's not his arrogance in general she objects to. It's the personal injury. The direct hit to her own self-worth. That's the seed of her prejudice against him.
Precisely. And the scene gives us two other perspectives that are just crucial. First, her friend, Charlotte Lucas.
The pragmatist.
The ultimate pragmatist. Charlotte basically shrugs it off. She argues that a man with his family, his fortune, everything going for him, well, he has a right to be proud.
She sees it as just a fact of life. An unfortunate but inevitable part of the social hierarchy that you just have to accept.
Exactly. But then you get Mary, the philosophical Bennet sister, who chimes in with this almost academic distinction.
Between pride and vanity.
Yes. Mary points out that pride is about our opinion of ourselves, while vanity is about what we would have others think of us. It's a brilliant little aside because it defines our main characters. Darcy is all pride, his internal belief in his own superiority.
And someone like Miss Bingley is all vanity. She's completely obsessed with how she appears to others. especially to Darcy.
It's all there. The Meryton Ball doesn't just end with an insult. It ends with the entire psychological and thematic framework of the novel laid bare.
So after the drama of the ball, the story shifts from that public stage back to private maneuvering, and Mrs. Bennet is ready to press her advantage with Jane.
She is. Jane gets a dinner invitation from Caroline Bingley, and Mrs. Bennet sees her chance.
And this is where her scheming gets, well, a little reckless.
A little. It's spectacular. She flatly refuses to let Jane take the carriage. She insists Jane go on horseback.
Knowing full well that it looks like it's going to rain.
That's the entire point. Her calculation is completely transparent. If Jane gets caught in the rain, she'll get sick, she'll be unable to travel home, and she will be forced to stay the night.
It's a way to manufacture an extended, intimate stay with Mr. Bingley that would otherwise be socially impossible.
And of course, Mr. Bennet sees right through it. When Jane does inevitably get sick, he has that wonderfully dark line.
Yes, he says something like, if she should die, it would be a comfort to know that it was all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley.
And Mrs. Bennet is completely unfazed. She's just happy her plan worked. Her only concern is making sure the horses aren't available to bring Jane home.
Jane's illness then prompts Elizabeth to make her move. She's genuinely worried about her sister.
And since the carriage is conveniently unavailable and she's not a great rider, she does something really quite radical for a woman of her class.
She walks 3 miles to Netherfield.
This act tells you everything you need to know about Elizabeth Bennet. She is an excellent walker. But that's not just a hobby. It's a metaphor for her independence, her energy, her complete disregard for superficial rules. Ladies were supposed to be conveyed, not tramp through the muddy countryside.
And her arrival causes an immediate clash of values. She gets to Netherfield, and her clothes are a mess. Her hair is everywhere. She looks almost wild.
And the Bingley sisters are absolutely horrified. For them, this is a major social crime. A mixture of pride and impertinence.
They just can't get over it. They say she has no conversation, no style, no beauty. Her only quality is being an excellent walker.
For them, the outer appearance, the decorum is everything. Elizabeth's very practical, very determined act violates their entire code of what a genteel lady should be.
It marks her as an outsider in their world. But that very quality is what seems to catch the eye of the one person who should despise her for it.
Mr. Darcy. While the sisters are mocking her, Darcy is observing her. And this forced proximity because of Jane's illness, it's starting to change things for him.
We get that incredible moment where he admits to Miss Bingley that he's been thinking about the very great pleasure which a pair of fine eyes in the face of a pretty woman can bestow.
And then he names her Miss Elizabeth Bennet.
It's a huge reversal from tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me.
A massive reversal. It shows that he's drawn to her spirit, her intelligence, the things that survive a 3-mile walk in the mud. He's looking past the surface, which is exactly what the Bingley sisters can't do.
And Miss Bingley, of course, immediately sees the threat.
Oh, instantly. Her jealousy just flares up. She jumps straight to sarcasm. When am I to wish you joy?
She's trying to shut it down, to make the idea seem absurd.
And Darcy's response is so telling. He calls out, a lady's imagination, how it jumps from admiration to love, from love to matrimony in a moment. He sees exactly what she's doing.
The tension in that drawing room over the next few days is just fantastic. Miss Bingley is trying everything to get his attention, walking around the room to show off her figure.
Yeah. Trying to engage him in these deep intellectual conversations, but he just keeps reading his book. He sees right through her performance.
And the whole time, his attention is really on Elizabeth.
It is. And the book gives us that critical insight into his state of mind. As he watches her, he begins to feel the danger of paying Elizabeth too much attention.
The danger? He knows he's attracted to her.
He knows, and he's fighting it. Because she is, everything he's been taught to believe is unsuitable. Her family, her lack of connections, her tendency to walk through muddy fields, it all violates his strict social code. But the attraction is there, and it's growing.
All of which brings us to the next big public event. The Netherfield Ball. The climax of this first act.
And it is the moment where all these simmering tensions are just destined to boil over. But first, Elizabeth has to survive a different kind of horror.
Her cousin, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins, the man who will inherit her home. He has shown up with this bizarre plan to atone for the entailment by marrying one of the daughters.
And he's chosen Elizabeth.
He has, and his character is just a masterpiece of awkward, pompous servility. He's always talking about his patroness, the great Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
So at the ball, Elizabeth is stuck with him for the first 2 dances, which the book calls the dances of mortification.
And it's a perfect description. He is awkward and solemn, apologizing instead of attending, and often moving wrong without being aware of it. He is performing the idea of being a gentleman and failing spectacularly.
The sheer agony of being partnered with this man, who is literally the embodiment of her family's bleak financial future. It makes her escape from him in ecstasy.
And it's right after this, while she's recovering with Charlotte Lucas, that the impossible happens.
Mr. Darcy approaches her.
Out of nowhere, the man who publicly slighted her, who she despises, suddenly asks her to dance.
And she's so stunned that she just accepts. Without knowing what she did, she accepted him.
That involuntary reaction is so important. It forces them together. It moves their relationship out of the world of overheard insults and into direct, physical, unavoidable engagement.
And that dance is not a romantic moment. It's a battle.
It's a duel, a verbal duel set to music. They are just circling each other, exchanging these pointed, witty barbs. They're trying to figure each other out, even as they're jabbing at one another.
She really challenges him, doesn't she? About his behavior, his pride. She completely turns the tables on him.
She does, and you get the sense that no one has ever spoken to him like that before. He is both infuriated and, I think, fascinated.
So after that dance, nothing is really the same. Jane and Bingley are moving closer together, that seems clear. But the dynamic between Elizabeth and Darcy has fundamentally shifted.
It has. It's no longer just simple contempt. It's a complicated, hostile, but very real engagement. They are now intensely interested in each other, whether they want to be or not.
And the stakes are immediately raised by the other players on the board.
Yes. Miss Bingley sees Darcy ask Elizabeth to dance, and she goes on the attack almost immediately. She starts planting seeds of doubt with Jane about Bingley's intentions, hinting he might be interested in Darcy's sister.
She's trying to break them up to protect her own interests. And at the same time, we see what the alternative looks like for women like Elizabeth.
The alternative is Mr. Collins, and while Elizabeth will go on to reject him, her practical friend Charlotte Lucas will not. Charlotte accepts him, purely for financial security. It's a brutal reminder of the economic reality that Elizabeth is, for the moment, choosing to ignore.
Miss Bennet, of course, is oblivious to all this nuance. She's just busy calculating the benefits of Jane's impending marriage to Bingley.
She's already planning how Jane's new position can be used to manage Lydia and Kitty and elevate the whole family. She is always focused on survival.
So we have seen the forces of necessity and desire clash in the microcosm of Meryton, where prosperity attracts both the kind-hearted gentleman, Mr. Bingley, and the proud, challenging Mr. Darcy. Elizabeth Bennet, refusing to be mortified, has accepted a dance that shifts her relationship with Darcy from one of simple contempt to genuine, though hostile, engagement.
Exactly. The initial judgments have been cast, the battle lines drawn between established wealth and spirited independence. The conflict is no longer confined to polite avoidance, but moves into direct confrontation. We leave the story at a point of high tension following the Netherfield ball, knowing that the stakes and the misunderstandings are about to rise significantly.
Absolutely. We've established the pride, but the prejudice is about to take center stage. In the next part, we will discuss the arrivals of Mr. Wickham and the shocking marriage proposal that changes everything. Join us next time on Fact Horizon as we continue our exploration of Pride and Prejudice.
Continuing our exploration of her absolute landmark, Pride and Prejudice, this is part 2.
And this is really where the polite social sparring, it kind of ends.
Oh yeah, this is where the real conflict begins.
In part 1, we really set up that initial dynamic. We had Darcy's pride, which is, born of his immense wealth and this rigid social conditioning.
And that collides head-on with Elizabeth Bennet's quick wit and, well, her equally fierce prejudice.
Exactly. We saw that frosty beginning at the Meryton ball, his truly damning assessment of her as just tolerable.
Ouch. Still stings.
And then, of course, the arrival of the thoroughly tedious Mr. Collins,
who then goes on to marry Elizabeth's best friend, Charlotte Lucas, setting up this really uncomfortable domestic situation.
And that transition, Charlotte choosing security over actual sentiment.
Yeah.
It feels so crucial.
It is, because it sets this very realistic and often, frankly, disappointing social backdrop. And against that, our main characters are about to have their own highly dramatic emotional failure.
So our mission in this deep dive is to trace that pivot, the complete and I'd say agonizing psychological and narrative turn in the story.
We're moving beyond just mutual dislike and a bit of social snark.
Right, we're going straight into the heart of the conflict where secrets finally get revealed, assumptions are just completely shattered.
And Elizabeth herself is forced into this humiliating recognition that she has been, and this is in her own words, blind, partial, prejudiced, absurd.
It's a huge moment. This is the great turning point. We've got Darcy's proposal at Hunsford.
The absolutely revelatory letter that follows it.
And then that pivotal, almost restorative visit to his grand estate, Pemberley.
We're basically charting the emotional earthquake that completely resets their entire relationship.
Okay, so let's jump straight in. Let's go to the heart of Kent, to a place that is, well, it's basically designed to reinforce the very social hierarchy that Elizabeth disdains. Hunsford.
Right. So Elizabeth is visiting her friend, Charlotte Lucas, now Mrs. Collins.
And she's living at the Hunsford parsonage, which is, I mean, it's literally in the shadow of Rosings Park.
The imposing estate of Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Mr. Collins' patroness. He never lets anyone forget that.
Never. And this setting is just so important. Hunsford is the complete antithesis of the Bennet family's, what would you call it? Easygoing, careless.
Careless is probably more accurate. At Hunsford, Charlotte's life is structured entirely around managing her husband's pride and, performing this required obedience to Lady Catherine.
And Elizabeth is watching her friend's very pragmatic choice. It's security over happiness.
And for her, it just confirms her own belief that she would never, ever sacrifice her integrity for convenience.
And who should be visiting Rosings but Lady Catherine's cousin?
Of course. Mr. Darcy.
Mr. Darcy himself, which means Elizabeth is suddenly thrust into very close proximity with the one man she actively dislikes and, as we know, completely misjudges.
They're constantly forced into each other's company. You have these oppressive dinner parties at Lady Catherine's.
And then, much more intimately, these encounters during Elizabeth's walks.
The walks are so fraught with tension, the text shows her actively trying to avoid him.
Oh, she does. She even tells him basically that this path is her favorite haunt, which is a pretty clear signal.
It's like, this is my space, please go away.
Yeah.
But he doesn't take the hint.
No, he keeps appearing. Sometimes he walks back with her, asking these sort of detached, almost random questions about whether she's happy in Kent.
And for Elizabeth, this just feels like he's doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
It's an intentional display of ill nature, like he's asserting dominance over the very landscape.
But we know what's really going on. He is struggling immensely. He's drawn to her against his better judgment. It's a classic case of reason failing against a genuine emotional pull.
And that struggle just culminates when he finds her alone at the parsonage. Chapter 34. The big one.
The proposal.
Let's break down the sheer drama of the proposal itself, because it really does stand as, well, perhaps the most famous and certainly the most spectacularly insulting declaration of love in literary history.
It really is. He just strides in. He completely ignores all the conventions of courtship.
There are no gentle hints, no flattery, nothing, just a blunt assertion.
It's a declaration that is born of this intense internal conflict, right? His desire is overriding his sense of propriety.
But his pride refuses to let him forget the sacrifice he thinks he's making.
Exactly. So he immediately starts emphasizing his great struggle against his own judgment, against his reason.
And against his own social standing in even thinking about marrying a woman of her rank.
He literally lists her family's deficits for her.
It's unbelievable. He talks about the inferiority of her connections, the, and I quote, degradation he feels in having fallen for her.
Degradation. Can you imagine? He's not asking for her hand.
No. He's informing her of his immense painful concession.
He just assumes, based on his wealth and status, that she's going to be grateful. That she'll just instantly agree.
I love you, even though it shames me to do so. You should be thrilled.
It's a rhetorical choice that just tells you everything about the depth of his pride at this point in the novel. He cannot imagine affection that is divorced from social calculation.
And when he thinks of him being brutally honest, this painful truth he's wrestled with,
Elizabeth just hears it as an unforgivable, arrogant insult.
and it's layered on top of all these other slights, this wounded vanity. Her mind is already made up against him, but the way he proposes is the absolute final straw.
So she refuses him. Vehemently.
And the strength of that refusal is more than just plot. It's a huge social disruption.
A woman of her standing refusing a man like him. It's shocking. He assumed she'd leap at the chance.
But she doesn't just say no. She delivers this double accusation, and it's designed to hit him where she thinks he's most vulnerable.
His conscience?
Exactly. First, she accuses him of malicious cruelty toward the charming, beloved Mr. Wickham.
Claiming he used his wealth and influence to ruin Wickham's fortunes. She has completely bought Wickham's fabricated, tragic story.
Darcy is the tyrannical villain in her version of events.
And that's the accusation that's based on her prejudice?
Yeah.
But then comes the second charge, the one that really defines her rejection.
The greater crime.
The greater crime. She says she could never accept the man who was the means of ruining, perhaps forever, the happiness of her beloved sister, Jane.
And that one lands. It hits home. It forces him to admit his interference with Jane and Bingley.
He confesses. He says he did prevent the match, but he justifies it to himself.
He was preserving his friend from what he saw as an unhappy connection.
Which, in Elizabeth's eyes, is the ultimate crime. It's a direct attack on her family, on her sister's heart.
But Darcy's justification is rooted in the very thing that Elizabeth herself often criticizes.
The appalling behavior of her immediate family. He confirms his primary objection wasn't Jane's lack of money, it was the lack of propriety of the Bennet family.
And the scene just ends in complete dramatic failure. She is left furious, totally self-righteous.
And Darcy is left utterly astonished. He's realizing for the very first time that his immense social standing means absolutely nothing against a woman with an independent spirit.
The stage is just perfectly set for the complete demolition of Elizabeth's entire worldview.
So the next morning, the tension from that confrontation is just palpable.
You can imagine.
Darcy, he can't just leave it unresolved, so he finds Elizabeth during her walk, and he hands her a letter.
A detailed, highly personal, explanatory letter.
And this letter isn't just a plot device. I mean, it is the engine of character reversal for the entire novel.
It's his defense. It's his chance to finally speak without being interrupted or scorned.
And he directly addresses the two critical accusations she threw at him.
Okay, so let's start with the first one. His defense for separating Bingley and Jane.
He confirms he did it, which validates Elizabeth's initial anger, but then he gives his rationale.
And it's very detailed.
It is. First, he claims that Jane showed, in his words, no symptom of affection, strong enough to convince him she was actually in love.
So her composure, her gentle manners, he read that as her heart not being seriously engaged.
Yes. He thought he was saving Bingley from investing in a relationship where the feeling was one-sided, or maybe just superficial.
Which is a classic misinterpretation of Jane's innate reserve. She's just not demonstrative.
Exactly. But the second part of his reasoning, the far more explosive part, concerns the Bennet family.
Right. He basically says the lack of money was secondary.
Completely secondary. Compared to, and I'm quoting again, the total want of propriety so frequently, so almost uniformly betrayed by her mother and younger sisters.
This is the social truth bomb. Darcy, from his high and mighty vantage point, is spelling out the very behaviors Elizabeth herself witnesses and cringes at every day.
Mrs. Bennet's loud, vulgar, completely inappropriate talk about marriage and money.
And Lydia and Kitty's wild giddiness, their idleness, their constant chasing of the officers.
He saw the family's conduct, especially at the Netherfield ball, as this permanent source of social disgrace that would forever taint his friend Bingley.
The letter just lays bare the undeniable reality. Darcy sincerely believes he was saving his friend from a connection that would ruin his reputation.
The irony is just so thick here. Elizabeth is enraged by Darcy's prideful interference.
Yet his interference is driven by the very embarrassment she feels every time her family opens their mouths in public.
The letter is just stating the ugly truth she's been trying to ignore.
But the real shock, the thing that completely shatters her moral confidence, is the Wickham revelation.
Oh, absolutely. She had built this whole narrative. Darcy the villain, Wickham the victim.
And Darcy's letter just systematically dismantles it, reverses it with specific, verifiable details.
He starts with his father's intentions. The elder Mr. Darcy planned to provide for Wickham, his godson, by promising him that clerical living.
A secure, respectable church appointment if Wickham chose to get ordained.
And that living wasn't just a job. It was a permanent, safe social status for life.
But the letter explains Wickham's true character, which is, well, mercenary.
He refused the church profession, said he wanted to study law instead, and he took a lump sum payment. £3,000.
Let's just pause on that figure. £3,000. In that era, that is a staggering amount of capital.
It's huge, enough for a single man to live comfortably or to set up a solid professional career.
And by taking the cash, Wickham basically severed his claim to the Darcy family's patronage.
He forfeited any moral right to that living later on.
And of course, the money wasn't spent on studying law.
No, Darcy confirms it was squandered in idleness and dissipation.
So when the clerical post finally became vacant, Wickham, now deeply in debt and desperate, has the audacity to apply for it.
Claiming he suddenly found a religious calling. It's just shameless.
And Darcy's refusal wasn't petty revenge, which is what Wickham claimed.
Not at all. It was an act of moral necessity. He reasoned that Wickham had already proven his lack of principle. He was morally unfit to be a clergyman, a position of spiritual guidance.
So Darcy wasn't denying him a livelihood out of spite. He was protecting the reputation of the church.
And fulfilling his duty as a patron to make sure the job went to a man of actual character.
And then the letter delivers the final, just devastating blow.
The attempted elopement with Darcy's 15-year-old sister, Georgiana, the summer before.
Wickham's motive was purely financial. Georgiana was said to inherit £30,000.
30,000? I mean, that is monumental wealth.
This wasn't a romance. It was a planned abduction, a financial heist.
And it was only prevented because Darcy arrived just in time. That detail confirms Wickham isn't just lazy or irresponsible.
No, he's a predator, utterly unprincipled, willing to ruin a child for money.
Elizabeth's internal crisis is just immediate and profound. She rereads the letter over and over, pacing the part.
And at first she resists it. She's fueled by her anger over the insults to her family.
But she can't deny the facts about Wickham. They're too specific, too catastrophic to be lies.
And so it begins what the book calls the earthquake of self-reproach.
She's forced into this agonizing process of objectivity. She realizes she was willfully blind.
She preferred Wickham's charming facade to Darcy's reserved, principled character.
She admits she mistook civility for virtue and quiet, cautious dignity for unforgivable pride.
The text is so beautifully clear about her shame. She had judged Darcy purely based on her wounded vanity.
He had slighted her, so he must be wrong about everything.
She realizes she was weak and vain and nonsensical.
And the most painful realization of all.
She concedes that Darcy's critiques of her family are accurate. Her mother is vulgar, her younger sisters are foolish, and her father is passive.
All that strong language she used when she confronted Darcy about Wickham now just seems wholly undeserved.
This moment is the complete psychological dismantling of her prejudice, and it's replaced by this overwhelming shame and a need for self-correction.
So Elizabeth leaves Hunsford a profoundly changed woman.
The entire framework of how she understands people, it's just collapsed and is being rebuilt.
And while she's grateful for Charlotte's kindness, the visit really underscores the huge difference in their philosophies.
Charlotte's stability, which she got by marrying Mr. Collins, it just highlights the social reality she chose, a life of calculation, of accepting mediocrity.
And Mr. Collins, of course, is blissfully unchanged, just bursting with his smiling solemnity and constantly congratulating himself on his Rosings connection.
So Elizabeth leaves not just with a new view of Darcy, but with a new, much more critical perspective on her own family.
And that perspective gets tested the moment she gets back to Longbourn.
The narrative does this so smartly. It goes from the theoretical critique in Darcy's letter to the immediate, tangible reality of her home.
She's forced to witness the very problems Darcy cited, problems she'd previously just dismissed as annoying eccentricities.
Now she's seeing her family through Darcy's severe aristocratic lens.
And the truth is undeniable. Her younger sisters, Lydia and Kitty, are described so starkly: ignorant, idle, and vain.
Their entire lives are consumed by chasing the officer stationed in Meryton. They demonstrate this absolute wild giddiness.
And the parental neglect is glaring. Mr. Bennet, the father she had always admired for his wit.
He's revealed to be deeply negligent. He's content to just laugh at his daughter's foolishness rather than actually restraining them.
He prefers the comfortable detachment of his library to the difficult work of being a parent.
It's a major insight, isn't it? His intellectual amusement comes at the cost of his children's moral education. He's fundamentally selfish in his passivity.
And Mrs. Bennet is the opposite. She's not passive, she's actively detrimental.
The book says she's entirely insensible to the evil of her own manners and their daughter's misconduct. She actively encourages Lydia's behavior.
Elizabeth is now watching this endless cycle of impropriety, and she knows it directly affected Jane's happiness.
She feels anew the justice of Mr. Darcy's objections.
That social judgment from him, which once seemed like unforgivable pride, now just looks like sound common sense, even if it was coldly delivered.
This internal shift makes her more disposed to pardon his interference in Bingley's affairs.
She realizes the social danger her family poses is real. In this world, one public scandal can ruin the futures of all 5 daughters.
And her parents are just throwing caution to the wind, so she's desperate for an escape.
A physical break from the shame of her family and the agony of her own self-reproach.
So she accepts an invitation from her aunt and uncle Gardiner for a summer trip.
Initially, the plan was the picturesque Lakes District.
And Elizabeth was all for it, famously declaring, "What are young men to rocks and mountains?"
Oh, what hours of transport we shall spend. She's seeking this, intellectual and aesthetic solace.
But the plans change. The trip is shortened and is shifted to Derbyshire.
Which makes Elizabeth apprehensive because she knows Derbyshire is Darcy's county. It's home to Pemberley.
She privately decides she can visit the county without impunity, assuming he'll be away for the London season.
But that little deviation is so significant. It subtly redirects her journey from this pure escape into nature to an almost irresistible gravitational pull toward the man she's now desperately trying to understand.
She's physically entering the very environment that shaped the proud Mr. Darcy.
The visit to Pemberley is just one of the most powerful structural components of the entire novel.
It's her external reconciliation with Darcy's true character, right?
Right.
It follows the internal one she had after the letter.
Exactly. And she only agrees to go after, confirming with a chambermaid at their inn that the family is definitely absent for the summer.
Which just shows how embarrassed she still is, how much she fears that awkward social collision.
But the setting itself is the first piece of evidence in Darcy's defense. Pemberley isn't just big, it's described as beautiful, natural, tasteful.
It's grand, but without being flashy. It blends harmoniously with the landscape.
And this immediately impresses Elizabeth. The estate reflects the owner. It suggests deep-seated taste and responsibility, not the arrogance she'd projected onto him.
She sees that Pemberley is a place of substance, not superficial display.
And then they meet the housekeeper, Mrs. Reynolds. This is where the real social audit happens.
Why is a servant's testimony so powerful in this specific social context?
Because in that society, how you behave toward your social inferiors was the single most honest gauge of your true character.
Right. Anyone can be polite to their peers.
Exactly. Your real character is revealed by how you treat people who depend on you for their livelihood. If Mrs. Reynolds speaks well of Darcy, it means his benevolence is genuine, not just a performance.
And she describes him as a kind, liberal, and benevolent master and landlord.
She emphasizes that many people's happiness is under his guardianship, meaning he takes his societal duties seriously. He provides for his tenants and his staff.
She also talks about his devotion to his younger sister, Georgiana, how he's constantly providing pleasure for her, like a new instrument for her room.
And Elizabeth, taking all this in, is forced to admit he is certainly a good brother.
This new information is the external proof that her first judgment of him, based only on his haughty manners toward her, was severely limited.
She's standing in front of his portrait, and she notes it has an infrequent smile she remembers seeing.
And she feels a more gentle sensation towards the original than she had ever felt.
Her prejudice is now completely gone. It's melted away, replaced by curiosity, respect, and this nascent, terrifying attraction.
She is actively wishing she had never rejected him.
And then, of course, in a stroke of narrative genius, Darcy comes home a day early,
startling Elizabeth and interrupting their tour.
The collision is just magnificent in its awkwardness. They both blush deeply. They both immediately recognize how much has changed since Hunsford.
Elizabeth is just overcome with shame. She thinks he must believe she'd purposely thrown herself in his way again.
Like she's chasing him down to repair the damage of her rejection.
But the critical moment is Darcy's reaction. His behavior is strikingly altered.
This is the first real, tangible sign that her rejection had the humbling effect she intended. He speaks with perfect civility, with gentleness. He's unassuming.
He's completely lacking his usual dignity and reserve. He's visibly distracted, even repeating questions about her family.
The contrast with his earlier self is just immense. He has taken her critiques to heart. He has worked on his pride, at least in his social conduct.
He respects her integrity, even though she refused him.
And this transformation culminates in a gesture of enormous social significance.
He asked for permission to introduce his sister, Miss Darcy, to her.
And in that era, a man like Darcy's younger sister was carefully shielded, only introduced to people deemed completely worthy.
So by offering to introduce Georgiana, he's giving Elizabeth this gratifying proof that he doesn't think ill of her. He is elevating her socially and morally in his family's eyes.
And the Gardiners are also astonished. They expected the cold, arrogant gentleman they'd heard about.
And instead they meet this polite, Genuinely unassuming man. They say he's infinitely superior to anything they had expected.
Which is that objective, external validation of Elizabeth's new opinion.
So she leaves Pemberley thinking she finally understands Darcy, ready to forgive his pride because she knows her own prejudice was the greater fault.
The proud man of Hertfordshire is revealed to be the benevolent gentleman of Derbyshire.
But the irony is, just as she's ready to accept his worth, their personal dynamic is about to be thrown into chaos by her family's worst fears coming true.
Elizabeth's internal transformation is complete. Her prejudice is gone. But just as she finds that personal peace, the external world just explodes.
While she's still at the inn in Lambton, she gets two urgent, panicked letters from Jane.
And this is the exact moment when the consequences of the Bennet family's lack of propriety, the very thing Darcy warned against and Elizabeth witnessed, hit them with brutal force.
The news. Lydia, just 16 years old, has run off with Mr. Wickham,
Initially, they think it's a runaway marriage to Gretna Green.
which was the Scottish village known for allowing minors to marry without parental consent. It was a legal loophole.
A Gretna Green marriage would still be a scandal, but at least it would be legal. It would preserve Lydia's virtue.
But the second letter reveals the true, grim horror. Wickham never intended to marry her.
Colonel Forster traced them only as far as Clapham in London, where they abandoned their carriage. They were just living together.
This is a social death sentence. For a girl in that era, losing her virtue is irretrievable. It leads to endless ruin.
And the scandal means Lydia is disgraced, but the shame spreads. It's contagious. It could ruin the marriage prospects for all five sisters.
And Elizabeth is instantly consumed by, as the book says, the keenest of all anguish, self-reproach.
This isn't just general distress. It's specific, agonizing guilt. She realizes that if she hadn't been blinded by her own vanity,
If she had believed Darcy's letter and exposed Wickham's true character earlier,
this whole scandal might have been avoided.
she now shares this catastrophic burden of hidden knowledge with Darcy. She sees his truth, and now she's experiencing the immediate, horrifying consequence of ignoring it.
And in a moment of supreme literary irony, Darcy himself appears at this exact devastating moment.
He finds her in tears. He, the man who had warned her, now witnesses the direct fulfillment of his worst social fears about her family.
His manner is described as having great concern, but also restraint. He offers sympathy, but the reality of the crisis is immediate.
The unfortunate affair will prevent his sister from seeing her that day.
And the unspoken implication is just so heavy. The Bennet family's disgrace is now public and contagious. It's reached the standards of Pemberley.
This meeting validates every single objection he ever raised in his letter at Hunsford.
The shame is just overwhelming for her, confirming her own terrible misjudgment of character.
The family reaction is just chaos. Mrs. Bennet is physically ill, hysterical, completely unable to cope.
And Mr. Bennet, distraught and unable to deal with the public nature of his private failure, has rushed off to London to search for them.
A pursuit that Jane rightly fears he is totally ill-equipped to handle.
Jane's urgent plea for Mr. Gardiner's help just underscores the gravity of it all. Only the level-headed, pragmatic Gardiners can navigate this crisis.
So Elizabeth and the Gardiners immediately hasten back to Longbourn. The family is now fighting desperately to stem the tide of malice that's threatening to overwhelm their reputation.
And the private conflict of Darcy and Elizabeth is now completely overshadowed by this very public social catastrophe.
So we have completed the dramatic pivot point in the narrative. Part 2 took us from that disastrous yet revealing proposal at Hunsford.
Through the dismantling of Elizabeth's prejudice via Darcy's detailed letter, and then finally to that humbling moment of self-realization at Pemberley.
Elizabeth's transformation is complete, but the external reality is one of ruin. The Bennet family is disgraced, their social standing effectively annihilated by Lydia's folly.
The marriage prospects for all five daughters are now severely jeopardized, and this crisis really tests the limits of the benevolence Elizabeth saw in Darcy at Pemberley.
So the ultimate provocative question is this: how can this profound public shame, which perfectly validates all of Darcy's initial objections, possibly be overcome?
Darcy's pride was humbled by rejection. Elizabeth's prejudice was destroyed by the truth. But Lydia's elopement is the greatest obstacle that's ever been placed between them.
Darcy himself had been warned away from connections with much less public folly, yet his behavior at Pemberley hints at a deep and persistent affection. The next steps will determine if his love for Elizabeth is powerful enough to make him yield not just his personal pride, but his entire social existence to deal with the disaster that's befallen her family.
In the final part, we will witness the scandal of Lydia's elopement and the ultimate resolution of Pride and Prejudice. Today we are closing the book quite literally on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. We've spent our previous sessions looking at all the early missteps, the judgments, the social pressures.
And now we get to the part where everything really comes to a head, the grand finale.
Exactly. Our mission today is to really analyze these final, incredibly intense chapters. We want to extract what they tell us about things like true worth, about social arrogance, and, that really difficult path to humility.
We're looking at three major turning points, really. The scandal that nearly breaks the Bennet family.
Right. Then the secret benefactor who saves them.
And finally, the ultimate confrontations that bring everything to a close. It's where both Pride and Prejudice are finally dismantled.
It's a phenomenal conclusion. Austen really puts the entire Bennet family, and Elizabeth in particular, through an absolute trial by fire before she allows any kind of redemption.
She does. And it all begins in chapter 47, with what can only be described as the catastrophe of Lydia and Wickham.
It's the moment everything the more sensible sisters, Jane and Elizabeth, have been fearing just comes crashing down. The news arrives by an express letter.
From Colonel Forster, yes. And it's blunt. Lydia has gone off with Wickham.
Now, the initial fear, as horrifying as it is that they've run off to Scotland, to Gretna Green.
Right, the classic elopement destination. It was the fastest way to get a legal marriage without all the formal announcements. It would have been rash, deeply scandalous, but survivable.
Survivable, right. They would have come back married. Poor, probably, but legally respectable. Society could eventually move on.
But the truth turns out to be so much worse. They find out the couple got rid of their chaise, their carriage, in Clapham, and were last seen heading toward London.
Which means what, exactly?
It means they had no immediate intention of marrying. They were, to put it in the starkest terms of the time, simply living together in sin.
And we have to really stress for you what that meant in 1813 England. The word Jane uses is irretrievable.
She says the loss of virtue in a female is considered irretrievable, and it leads to endless ruin.
And ruin here isn't just, personal shame. It's a complete economic and social disaster for the entire family. Instantly.
Instantly. The marriage prospects for all the other sisters, Jane, Mary, Kitty, they just evaporate. Their family name is now tainted. No respectable man, no respectable family would want to be connected to them after this.
And you see the effect inside the family immediately. Mrs. Bennet, who, let's be honest, encouraged Lydia's behavior,
is now physically ill, locked away in her room, hysterical. And Mr. Bennet, the man who is usually so detached and witty, who makes a joke of everything, he's completely shattered.
Elizabeth says she'd never seen him so distressed. And it's this profound moment where his witty, satirical shield is just stripped away.
Yes. He finally has to face the consequences of his own negligence as a father. The moral failure he refused to prevent is now out there for the whole world to see. It's devastating.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, Austen layers on this external cruelty. The letter from Mr. Collins.
Oh, that letter. It's a masterclass in pious, self-serving cruelty. Jane reads it while her father is away in London, and it's astonishing.
Not one word of sympathy, not a single offer of help.
No, just pure condemnation. He actually writes that he and his patroness, Lady Catherine, agree that the scandal will be injurious to the fortunes of all the others. He's already calculating the damage to his other cousins.
But the part that really gets me is his advice for Mr. Bennet.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? He advises his own cousin to throw off your unworthy child from your affection forever.
Throw off! It's so clinical, so brutal. Like Lydia is a disease that needs to be cut out to save the rest of the body.
Exactly. And then he has the nerve to congratulate himself for being rejected by Elizabeth, basically gloating that he dodged a bullet and avoided being dragged down into their family's sorrow and disgrace.
It's just appalling. So, okay, we have this total collapse. Social, moral, emotional. The family is, for all intents and purposes, ruined.
And this is the genius of Austen's plotting. Because this absolute disaster is the very thing, the crucible, that allows a true hero to emerge, and to do so in secret.
This brings us to the secret benefactor.
Yes. Mr. Bennet comes back from London, defeated. He can't find him. He has to hand over the search to his brother-in-law, Mr. Gardiner, who is a much more practical, level-headed man.
And then, out of nowhere, a letter arrives from Mr. Gardiner, and it's a miracle. Wickham has agreed to marry Lydia.
It's stunning news. And Elizabeth, who knows Wickham's character better than anyone knows, this is impossible. She knows he would never marry Lydia without some kind of massive financial incentive.
So they start looking at the terms of the deal, which Mr. Gardner lays out in the letter.
Right. And Mr. Bennet, he's sharp. He analyzes them immediately. First, all of Wickham's many debts, both in his old town of Meryton and in Brighton, are to be paid off completely.
Okay, that's a big deal on its own.
A huge deal. And on top of that, Wickham is to be given an annual income. £100 a year while Mr. Bennet is alive, and £50 a year after he dies.
Which isn't a fortune, but it's enough to live on. But Mr. Bennet sees right through it, doesn't he?
Instantly, he knows Wickham. He says it himself. No man in his senses would marry Lydia on so slight a temptation. A man like Wickham would only give up his freedom for a much, much larger sum paid up front.
And so he assumes...
He assumes Mr. Gardner, his kind, generous brother-in-law, has paid a fortune out of his own pocket. He even speculates on the amount, something around £10,000.
£10,000? I mean, that's an almost unimaginable sum of money.
It's Darcy's entire annual income. It's the kind of money that defines a gentleman's entire fortune. And Mr. Bennet is just consumed by this shame, believing his relative has basically bankrupted himself to buy back Lydia's honor.
And that feeling must be even worse when Lydia and Wickham actually show up at Longbourn as a married couple.
Oh, her return is it's a spectacle. Lydia is completely shameless. Austen describes her as wild, noisy, and fearless. She's showing off her wedding ring, talking about the whole elopement like it was just this grand adventure.
As if it wasn't something that nearly destroyed her entire family.
Exactly. And Wickham, the ultimate scoundrel, just stands there with his charming manners, acting like nothing's wrong. Elizabeth is just mortified.
But the real truth, the big reveal, that comes later.
It does. Much later. Elizabeth finds out the truth almost by accident from a stray comment made by her aunt, Mrs. Gardner. The benefactor wasn't Mr. Gardner at all.
It was Darcy.
It was Darcy. He tracked them down in London. He paid off all of Wickham's debts. He paid for Wickham's new commission in the army. He settled the indubie on Lydia. He basically paid the entire £10,000 himself.
And Elizabeth is finally able to thank him for his, as she calls it, unexampled kindness.
It's more than just kindness, though. It's this quiet, anonymous moral heroism. He did it all in a way that ensured no one, especially not Elizabeth, would ever know he was the one who saved them.
Okay, but I have to push back on this a little bit. Is it purely about saving Elizabeth's family? I mean, Darcy has a very personal stake in keeping Wickham quiet, doesn't he?
That's a very fair and important point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wickham is the one person who knows the true story about Darcy's sister, Georgiana. A public disgrace for Wickham could easily have dragged all of that out into the open. So yes, part of his motive is self-preservation.
So it's a mix of motives then?
I think so. But the sheer amount of money, the personal risk of negotiating with a man like Wickham, and crucially, the intent to secrecy, it all points to the fact that his primary driver has changed. He isn't seeking public credit. He's trying to protect the woman he loves. His pride used to make him hide his flaws. Now his changed character makes him hide his virtues.
And that revelation just completely humbles Elizabeth. She realizes the moral depth of the man she hated so fiercely, all based on Wickham's lies.
It's a profound shift. She sees that Darcy's pride now expresses itself as this silent, powerful generosity, not arrogance. And that proves to her that he's capable of real change.
But before they can get to that final reconciliation, there is one last major obstacle.
The old world has one last gasp, one final attempt to enforce the social order.
Enter Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
In what has to be one of the most dramatic entrances in all of literature. She arrives at Longbourn completely unannounced, having traveled all the way from Rosings Park just for this confrontation.
Mrs. Bennet is impressed for about 5 seconds by the fancy carriage.
And then Lady Catherine's cold, insolent manner just freezes the room. She isn't there for a polite social call. She is there to interrogate and to command.
She gets Elizabeth alone, forces her on a walk outside, and she doesn't waste a single moment. She gets right to the point.
She's heard a rumor that Darcy intends to propose to Elizabeth. And she is there to demand that Elizabeth promise she will never, ever accept him.
And her reasoning is just pure, unadulterated class snobbery.
It's a belief that the social hierarchy is almost a law of nature. She insists Darcy is destined for her own daughter, Miss de Bourgh. Why? Because of their noble bloodline, their connections, their splendid fortune.
And she just attacks Elizabeth on every front. Her lack of status, her lack of money, and of course her disgraceful connections.
Yes, she throws the Lydia and Wickham scandal right in her face.
Mm-hmm.
She calls Elizabeth an upstart and basically says her ambition to marry Darcy is a kind of social crime.
This is really Elizabeth's final test, isn't it? It's not just about being rude to an old lady. It's about standing up to the entire social system she represents.
If she backs down here, she's admitting that she is inherently inferior because of her birth. But she doesn't back down. Her refusal is it's so powerful. It shows how much she's grown.
She treats Lady Catherine's threats with what Austen calls dignified impertinence.
And she delivers one of the greatest lines in the whole book. She lifts Lady Catherine in the eye and says, "In marrying your nephew, I should not consider myself as quitting that sphere. He is a gentleman. I am a gentleman's daughter. So far, we are equal."
That's her Declaration of Independence. It's a radical statement for the time. She's saying worth comes from character, from being a gentleman's daughter, not from titles or money.
Absolutely. And the incredible irony is that this disastrous, aggressive confrontation by Lady Catherine is the very thing that makes the second proposal possible.
Right. So how does that work? How does this awful visit give Darcy hope?
Well, Darcy explains it later. After Lady Catherine fails to bully Elizabeth, she goes straight to him and tells him everything Elizabeth said. And Darcy realizes that if Elizabeth had been absolutely irrevocably decided against me, as she was during the first proposal.
She would have just told Lady Catherine that, frankly and openly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She would have used it as a weapon to end the conversation. The fact that she refused to promise anything, that she refused to deny the possibility, it meant the door was still open. Just a crack, but open.
So that leads to the final walk, where Elizabeth finally gets to thank him for everything he did for Lydia.
That's the opening he needs. He takes that moment to propose again, and this time, it's completely different.
And Elizabeth's answer is different. She says her feelings have undergone a material change, and she accepts him with gratitude and pleasure.
And this is where the title of the book is finally fulfilled. Because for this to happen, both of them have to confess their central flaws. It's a moment of incredible self-awareness for both of them.
Let's talk about Darcy's confession. Some might say it's just, a very smooth, romantic speech designed to win her over. Do you see it as more than that?
Oh, much more. It's not just rhetoric. It's a deep, almost clinical self-analysis. He doesn't just say, "Sorry, I was proud." He explains the origin of his pride. He says he was spoiled by his parents, taught to be good and principled, but allowed to practice those principles in pride and conceit.
So he was taught to look down on everyone else.
He was taught to think meanly of all the rest of the world. It's a stunning admission, and it's an indictment of that whole aristocratic upbringing that valued principles over empathy.
And he gives her the credit for changing him.
He does, explicitly. He says to her, "By you I was properly humbled. I came to you without a doubt of my reception. You showed me how insufficient were all my pretensions to please a woman worthy of being pleased."
He's admitting his first rejection was completely deserved, that she was right all along.
And in turn, Elizabeth has to admit her own fault. That her prejudice made her misjudge him completely, made her fall for Wickham's lies because they confirmed what she already wanted to believe about Darcy's arrogance.
So pride is humbled, prejudice is overcome, the reconciliation is complete.
It is. Even Mr. Bennet, who was initially shocked that Elizabeth would marry a man she claimed to hate, comes around. He sees Darcy's true character and says he is rising every hour in his esteem.
And that final chapter, 61, just ties it all up. Jane and Bingley are happy, and Elizabeth writes that wonderful line to her aunt.
"I am the happiest creature in the world. I am happier even than Jane. She only smiles, I laugh." It's such a perfect summary of her character. The triumph is complete.
So when we pull it all together, what's the big takeaway from this final act?
For me, it's the incredible contrast between public shame and private virtue. Lydia's elopement is a very public disaster, and it's met with a completely hidden, silent act of generosity from Darcy. The story proved that true worth isn't about your rank or your money. It's about the moral choices you make, especially when no one is watching.
And the real price that was paid wasn't the £10,000 Darcy gave to Wickham. The real price was the humility Darcy had to learn, the absolute destruction of his own ego, which is what made him worthy of her in the end.
That transformation is everything. Their marriage isn't just a romance. It's a defiance of the social rules of their world. It says that understanding and mutual respect can be more powerful than class.
It's a fascinating conclusion, and it does leave us with a final thought to consider. So Elizabeth and Darcy get their happy ending at Pemberley. They're rich, they're in love, but they still have to exist in that very rigid, polite society.
A society with a very long memory.
Right. Darcy has a lifelong reputation for being impossibly proud, and Elizabeth's family is now infamous for its scandalous connections, thanks to Lydia.
So we'll leave you with this question to think about. In a world that is built on status and reputation, Is complete social acceptance ever really possible for a couple like this? A couple whose marriage broke all the rules?
Mm.
Or is their happiness something they can only truly find within the walls of Pemberley, forever a little bit on the outside?
A compelling idea to mull over. The internal change is complete, but the external world may never fully catch up. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the profound truths and facts that define human existence, drawn from the pages of Jane Austen.
Join us next time for a new analysis on Fact Horizon and continue your journey beyond the horizon.
Goodbye for now.